Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to Spindle TV. Finally, we were supposed to have a class Tuesday, which got pushed back to Wednesday, which got pushed back to Thursday, which got pushed back to tonight. I do apologize for all of the rescheduling of the classes this evening, but we're trying to, for the month of October, Digital Woodcarver, we're doing little miniature road shows throughout the U.S., kind of the, the northern states and everything. And we've got everybody spread out going to the different locations to our customers' homes to have like open houses. And I had to get everything prepared for the files and designs and newsletters and things going out to the newspapers. And it just, with customer service, it just kind of kept pushing me back further and further and further. So thank you for taking time out of your Friday evening and hanging out with me while we have this discussion on grunge / distress type textures and see if we can make something interesting of it. That being said, let's go ahead and stop talking. You guys have been waiting all week for a class. Let's get into it. Let's I believe I am set up on camera 2. Let's get me over in the lower left corner here. Wonderful. Alrighty. Alright. So, hopefully, we are not going to buffer too much. We might have some buffering. These grunge textures are the vectors because there's a lot of noise, if you will, in the grunge textures and stuff. There's a lot of noise in there, so they really eat up the processing of the designs and everything. And so I'm hoping that it doesn't pull the resources too badly on the computer and cause a lot of buffering while we go through these. We'll see how we fare. We'll see how we do. So what we're going to start off with is to get this ball rolling. I'm going to bring in a distress sign. You might have saw it in the thumbnail. And as I said, these textures have a lot of noise in them. I mean, that's exactly where we're distressing and everything. So this is where it's really going to test the processing power of your PC. Let's get this on the screen here. This crackle effect on this sign. Let's see if I can get this sized down to fit my board. And get it centered. Okie dokie, tokie dokie. Now, when you are going online, when you're looking for these texture type backgrounds, the two key search terms that we would look for would be grunge, vector, or even distressed vector. Either one of the two will kind of get you into the realm of where we want to be when we're looking for these. Now, grunge textures, you can be more specific. You can look for wood grain type textures, wood grain grunge, distressed wood grain, splatter vectors, you know, like paint splatter or whatever. Splatter, I just kind of, you know, these general search terms. all of these terms will kind of get you into, the type of, distress or backgrounds we're looking for. And again, when we are looking, there's a lot of different sites where you can get free backgrounds, or sites where you can sign up and have a membership and what have you to download. But there's all kinds of resources. Use your resources smart and properly and everything. But just know that there's a lot of noise and everything in the textures, and that's just it's going to be a lot for the Vectric software to process and work with. So you just got to have that understanding and that patience if you're going to work with this. I have a woman, her name is Jamie. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to carve much anymore, but she, in my opinion, specialized in grunge textures. Most all of her signs and everything, she had some form of a grunge background engraved in, and it's mostly going to be using a V-bit, kind of a V carving, if you will. Her signs were awesome. And when she'd go in and airbrush and kind of give it that distressed look, it really kind of popped and stuff. I'm not a finisher as far as like finishing a project. I'm a lacquer kind of guy, a clear coat. But when it comes to like decorative painting or kind of that painted, faded paint distress look and things like that, I don't have that skill level of finishing. That's why I never teach a finishing class for the most part. But there are some of you guys and girls out there that are just absolutely skilled to the T with these type of projects and everything, with types of finishing and stuff, making things look amazing. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull in a couple of other distress backgrounds, and I want to show you a few samples of some different options, and then we're going to make a sign, and we're going to show. It's going to be, if you have really kind of been following the last, I would say 6 or 8 classes where we are taking multiple items and we are blending them together by doing offsets and clearing inside of a boundary and stuff like that. This falls into the same realm because we've got our texture boundary, but we have our object, whatever it is that we're working with, that we have to throw on the board and clear out the background or the texture around it. It's kind of the same thing, the same procedure. So if you've been following the classes over the past few weeks and stuff, the theme, if you will, unintentional, but the theme, if you will, has kind of been the same in things. But I've got a few DXF files. I'm going to import a vector, and I'm going to bring in a few of these at one time. So we'll bring in this one next. And I'm going to be bringing in, and I'm going to be taking out some and stuff like that. So it's not a whole lot of stress on the on the processing and everything, because it is a lot. This particular texture here is kind of a worn brick wall. That's the one we're going to be working with later in just a bit. But just kind of a tattered, worn brick wall. If I were to, let me come in here and add a new layer and call this our brick grunge. There's 2 of them I have, so I'll make this brick grunge 1. And if I move this over to that layer, I can turn off the other layers, and I can center, let me get back in our drawing side here, I can center this on our material. Now for this particular one, I would actually because it's kind of a corner piece in my sign and everything. I would actually kind of scale it up to where, you know, it might be just working with half the board. Now I could scale it up, you know, where I can make that texture, I can stretch it out if I want to, because I'm getting rid of anything that I don't want and everything. But I may want this to be kind of a, let's see here, kind of a corner texture, if you will. And I want to move this off of my edge. I want to move this negative 1 inch on the X and a positive 1 inch on the Y. I want to kind of bring that up there. And bring that down just a little bit. Okay. And I may have a word here where it overlaps this texture and stuff. We'll see. We're going to do it in just a moment. But we can have all kinds of fun with it. Now, I'm going to bring in another texture. I'm going to kind of push my luck and see how many I can bring in at one time. Because again, there's a lot of noise. It's just trash, right? If you would think it was trash, but we actually want it in our design and everything. But when we go to start trimming and everything, this is where you got to have patience, especially if you have just a standard laptop that you're working on or anything like that. This is where it's really I was scared to do this class, and I haven't done this class because of the time that it takes when we're doing our trimming for it to redraw the vectors and everything. Just like I'm literally importing a vector into the design, and we're sitting here waiting. I'm killing time by talking a lot because it still has not brought in that vector yet. Now it has. And let's go up here. Let me turn on the layer so we can see it. And so this one is really a grungy. This would be a full-on background. It wouldn't be a partial or anything. And we would stretch it out to really get some rough looking and stuff. But you're going to see things like this, and normally we want to kind of clean it up. What I would recommend, and we're going to trace one here in just a moment, so I can talk to you about the settings. What we do want to do, if we can, I mean, we want the grunge texture, but we want to turn up our noise filter. When we are tracing our bitmap, we have a noise filter where we can eliminate some of the noise. Now, we don't want to eliminate the noise entirely, right? We don't want it to, we want the noise. That's the grunge, that distressed look and stuff that we want. However, if I were to zoom in closely here, all of these square pixels that you see here, anything that's really square, that's like square or figure eight and all, that is noise. Even though we have noise going on in our texture, all of these square vectors, those are pixels that we could have filtered out. If I would have turned my noise filter up a little bit when I was tracing the image, I could have eliminated a lot of that. I want the ones with shape to them. I want the vectors that have some kind of curve or contour or shape to it. All of these square vectors are just trash pixels that I could have left out. And those little square pixels here, all that little bitty noise that we could eliminate during the tracing process kind of helps us out with not having to deal with it when we're trimming vectors and things like that and all that stuff. So we want to do our best to try to eliminate that. Now, when I was tracing these, I didn't have the noise filter turned up at all, so that I could bring in all of the trash and noise to have this discussion, right? But if I were tracing these, I would want on my noise filter to be at least at a level 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. I'm probably going to be at a 5 or 6, to be honest with you. It all depends on how bad it affects. But if you look here, these figure 8, I call them figure 8 kind of vectors, and these square vectors, that's trash that we could eliminate by increasing our noise filter that we don't want. Because when we go to calculate our toolpath, we're going to get the pop-up of you have overlapping vectors. Do you want to continue, or do you want to go to the vector validator to find them, right? And so then we have to go to the vector validator, and it's got to find all these things, and it's going to find all these overlaps and intersections and all because of all of these figure 8, trash things, right? Or if two vectors happen to be overlapping. Let me close the tool here. Where all of these vectors happen to be overlapping or intersecting one another in a sense where one of these square vectors is kind of overlapping one of our others, right? We want to, we would have to avoid that. And when we go to calculate the toolpath, of course, the Vectric toolpath is it goes through the vector validator process now in versions, I believe 10.5, 11, and stuff like that. I don't know if 9.5 had the vector validator or not at that point. It might have. But before it calculates the toolpath now, it goes through a validation process to look for all of these potential errors. And then it's going to pop up the warning. If it finds any, it's going to pop up the warning. Do you want to continue? Hey, there's overlaps and intersections, within this, toolpath. Do you want to continue, or do you want to go to the vector validator and you find them and clean them up kind of thing, right? Well, that long process of trying to find all of those intersections, that's what takes so long when it's trying to calculate the toolpath. So we want to do our best to try to eliminate that in the beginning. Okay? All right, so I'm going to take this one out of the equation for a moment. And I'm going to hit delete to get rid of that. It's going to take a second. It even takes a second to delete all of these vectors. I hit the delete key. Now it's been, a good 10 seconds ago. It's still there, right? So, I mean, it's a lot. For some, it may be just too much, right? It's like, I can't wait to deal with all that stuff in the design process. But for some, it's worth it. And I'm going to tell you, like I said, I got to refer back to Jamie because she's the one that I know that really, really worked with grunge a lot, and it's got a cool look to it. It's got a cool effect and everything. Okay, so let's. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one as well, and I'm going to try to minimize whatever is on my my screen as I can. I'm going to eliminate these things. And let's go ahead and we're going to start off. We'll trace one. We'll bring one in to trace it and everything. And then we'll go through the trace procedure, noise filter, and things like that. And then we'll bring a design in, or we'll bring one in or create one or whatever that we want to work with. We'll come up with our design for the evening and stuff. So stick with me. Hopefully I don't lose a lot of you and bore you to death with this, but I think that it will be good. In the meantime, let me just say this. If you have any questions and you want to put them in the chat, please do me a favor. Throw a question mark or two in front of your question. Normally, we normally put it in the back or the end, but put it in the front so that I can identify in the chat that it's a question for me and stuff. And and we'll go from there. Now, Brooks, I don't know if you were having just a discussion with everybody in the group, but you had asked, or you had made a statement that said, started messing around with filling engraved text with color. Used tongue oil to seal the end grain, then filled with nail polish. Looks good, which is acetone, right? Nail polish. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not nail polish remover. Actual nail polish. Looks good. What's everyone go-to technique? So you were asking that kind of a general question, and unfortunately, I don't have a go-to technique that I could share with that and everything. But that sounds pretty interesting. I was surprised about the tung oil because of the oil finish of it and everything. But if it sealed well and you gave it some time to dry, I think when I did a tung oil finish the last time before I could put another type of finish on top of it, I had to wait like 7 days for it to really cure somewhat and all. But that's pretty cool. And hopefully some other people throw up some go-tos and answer your question for you. All right, let's bring in, I'm going to import an image. And I've got some different textures and everything in here, but I'm going to import an image in. And we can see that there is just a lot of noise here and everything. And when I am tracing this, first and foremost, in the trace bitmap tool, I want to turn the fading off. Okay, I want to be able to see the image in its full glory, whatever it may be, and I want to try to bring in as much of the noise as I can. If you notice on this particular image, it's set at 50 or below, there's nothing on the screen, right? So I'm going to come to about an 85. Let me see here, about an 85. And now on my fit, okay, on my corner fit, normally I'm a big advocate of the default corner fit when I'm tracing graphics, you know, images and things like that, which is a nice, you know, if we're too tight, the lines are really stiff and rigid when it's tracing the images. If it's too loose, they're kind of sloppy. You know, the default corner fit is usually just bang on, you know, for tracing images and stuff. Well, this is the one time where I want to experiment with my corner fit, and I want to, you know, because I want this grunge and everything, depending on how crisp I want my grunge when I V Carve, when I engrave it in and stuff like that, how you know, loose or tight I want the vectors will kind of depend. But here is where I'm going to really play with the corner fit, you know, because I don't want it to be, I want a little bit of grunge. I want a little bit of variation and things like that. So I might be at a lower corner fit than normally. For me, I am at the default corner fit, 82%, 99% of the time. Unless I'm carving kind of block letters and I need a really straight, tight fit, you know, and stuff. But here, I'm going to probably bring myself down to about a 65%. Let me kind of get there. On my corner fit, because I want to be a little loose with this. I want to be a little loose with this, you know, texture and everything. I don't want to be too rigid and stiff. Now, the noise filter, because there is a lot of little miscellaneous pixels in here that would just, you know, trace and everything, that I want to try to eliminate some of that. Not all. I don't want to lose, you know, the little bits of the texture, because that's really what gives that distressed look. We have our big distressed areas, but then we have those finer details, those finer distressed areas and stuff. I don't want to lose all of that, but I do want to try to eliminate some of the, just those square figure 8 trash pixels, right? So on this, I'm actually going to bring myself up to a 6, and then I'm going to preview the trace. Okay. And in here, as I zoom in, you can see the ones that did not get traced and everything. And I can see I'm going to grab a patch, right? A patch area here. And I see none of those figure 8s or none of those square textures and all of that stuff, right? Now, if I had myself turned down, I'm going to turn my noise filter down, and I'm going to retrace that. Okay. And if we now look at that same patchwork that we're in and everything, you would see kind of those square pixels and stuff in here. So you would see those square pixels and things, right? And that is that little bit of square pixels, and that's where those figure eights come in and things like that. I want to do my best to eliminate that as much as possible. So I can, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. I can work my way up till they start disappearing and everything. But for me, I'm just gonna go a little bit over midline. It's 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, should I say? I'm gonna be at a 5 or 6 in this case. I'm going to stick with 6. Okay. So we're going to preview that, and anything 6 pixels or less, it's going to ignore. Right. And I'm pretty confident that in my patch area here that I'm in, where I have eliminated a lot of those square vectors and stuff, I'm going to be pretty consistent throughout the rest of the grunge design. Okay. All right. And everything. And a great question came up. Brooke said, can you make your grunge import a tileable clip art or add it to a sculpting brush? Yes. Okay. Now, that's an Aspire feature. So, Brooks, we got to be fair to everybody. I'm working in V Carve Pro right now, but it is an Aspire feature. But yes, if I had a grunge design like that brick or whatever, even this, I could make it a textured brush. For when I'm sculpting models, I could add that grunge texture in. Yes, absolutely, for sure. The tileable vector, the tileable feature, I forget the process of how to make it because I'm not in Aspire right this second. But how to make it to where it's a tileable, I can create that tileable design and everything. But yes, if I was in Aspire, I believe I could do that. Yes. But I know for sure the sculptured brush off the top of my head, I can say absolutely yes. All right, so let's go ahead and apply this texture here, and then we're going to close out of there. Now I'm going to come up to my layers and turn my bitmap layer off, so I'm just left with my design here. And this design, I could make it a tileable design as far as like I could create an array of rows and things like that. But generally what I do is, because I want my grunge to be a little bit more spaced out, I am going to actually stretch this texture. And I could keep the aspect ratio till it covers my whole board, or I could, let me undo that, or I could stretch it out to the general area that I want to work with, and then I'll end up trimming away what I don't want. Or if I want to keep it that tightness and I don't want to stretch it all, then I could create repeatable patterns, and I'll show you that as well. So this is a stretch, right? This is a stretch that you see here. If I undo that, I could come into my array tool, and let's say that I'm just going to go 2 rows, 2 columns, 2 rows, 2 columns, and a gap. I'm going to go a 0 gap in between. I want to try to keep it somewhat consistent and everything, and I could rotate if I wanted to every other part with my symmetry and stuff, and all, but in this case I'm not going to. And I could array this texture to whatever size I needed it to be. Like if it was a small texture patch and I wanted to create an array of it to fit over my design, I could do that. So this is an array of 2 rows of it and 2 columns of it, with no spacing, virtually no spacing in between. But what you can see is, if you look very closely, and I'm going to zoom in here, this straight line right there, and this straight line, it's hard to see there, but you can see where the seams are, right? where they kind of, you know, come in. It's not, it's more of a ridge. It's more of a straight line instead of you know, got some rounded contour to it and stuff like that. You know, and everything. Now we could take that, which I'm not going to do because the process, I could just imagine how long it would take, but we could use our curve fit tool and redraw all of these vectors and all with curves and everything to eliminate some of that straight line and everything. Or we could just chalk it up as it's, you know, it's grunge, right? So it's going to come out however it comes out. I'm going to undo the array, and I'm going to stretch. Okay, so we're going to stretch the design and everything. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm going to stretch horizontally. I'm going to keep I'll go here and I'm going to stretch it just a little bit this way, because I'm going to end up taking, I'm going to be drawing a border in here, and I'm going to trim to that border before I put in whatever my design and stuff is. But I'm going to stretch it out to kind of create my grunge background. And I want to do, you're going to see the brick one. We're going to do that next and stuff, but I want to do this as well because this one's got a lot of vectors. I want you to kind of, I need you to kind of get a sense of the time that it takes. So you and I are going to hang out a little bit and talk while this goes through. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and hit File, Save As, and I'm going to call this my Grunge class. Grunge class 10.7.22. And I'm going to save what I've got so far in case, you know, I lose anything or crashes and all, because I'm sure it may, it depends on your computer and all, it might have a tendency to crash, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my border. Now I will, on this board, this is a 24 inch by 11 1/4, a 1 by 12 board that's 24 inches long. I am starting, I've got the design set up on this particular one to start in the center. It just happens to be what it's set up. Normally I work off the bottom left corner because I have a edge finding tool, quick set jig tool that zeroes out my X, Y, and Z. But for this, I'm just starting in the corner. I'm not going to go back and change it right now. I'm starting in the center, sorry. I'm not going to go back and change it. But what I want to do is I want my rectangle that I'm about to draw to be at 0, 0. The center point of my rectangle to be at the center of my board, because 0, 0 is my center. And I want to take the width of my board, the letter W or the letter X I can use for variables, and I want to subtract 2 inches from that. And that's going to give me my width minus 1 inch on one side, 1 inch on the other, because I want that 1 inch frame, right? So I subtract 2 inches from that, and that's going to give me, in this case, 22 inches. My height, H or the letter Y, and I'm going to subtract 2 inches from that. Hit that equal sign, not your enter key. And then I'll be able to create that rectangular border. Okay. Now, the one key thing is that on our grunge, I want to make sure that those vectors, those little bitty vectors and stuff, I want to group them together. For the most part, I want to group them together, which they are. When I traced it, it was grouped automatically. And I want to make sure that they're selected first. Okay, so they're selected pink right now. They're first. I'm going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to select my border last. So the last item that you select becomes your trimming boundary. Generally, in a lot of the tools and stuff, the last item we select becomes the boundary of what we're trying to do. If I select one item to align it to another, the first item I select is what I want to align. The last item I select is what I want to align to, right? And so in this case, the last item I'm selecting is going to be my trim boundary. And when I trim, I'm not going to use my scissors, I'm going to use my trim tool. I want to either clear outside of that boundary or I want to clear inside of that boundary, right? Now, Before I trim, there's one other thing that I need to do or want to do is when it's carving this grunge and everything, I'm going to be doing kind of a V carve cut, if you will, and I don't want my V bit that's cutting the grunge background to run into my border. Okay, my border is going to have that. If I'm using a 60 degree or a 90 degree V bit, I'm using a 60. It's going to have that angle slope down, and I don't want to tear that up. Okay, I don't want to, when I'm carving that grunge. So I'm going to take my rectangular border and I'm going to offset it inward by a certain amount. Now, how far that amount is depends on the bit that you're using and how deep your cut's going to be. Now, I'm going to be doing, I want two different levels here. So I'm going to be doing kind of a raised effect, and I want the texture carved in the background. So my depth of cut, kind of that pocket area, if you will, is going to determine my offset distance and everything. The deeper we offset, kind of the more that angle comes down and inward and stuff, especially with a 90 and things like that. For me, I'm going to use an 1/8 of an inch pocket depth, if you will, kind of a, that's going to be my flat depth. So I'm actually going to offset inward 0.125. Now, technically 0.0722 is all that I would need to offset without running into my V. And where I got that number, for those of you that are new, I'm going to be using a 60 degree V bit. And if I draw a line at the tip of the bit, that line would represent, let's say, the top of my board. So what we're looking at here in this image is my V bit sitting on the top of the board, that line. Okay? Now, if I were going to be cutting an 1/8 of an inch deep, let's say, let's move this line upward an 1/8 of an inch. This illustration would represent the bit cutting into the board by an 1/8 of an inch, that 1/8 of an inch depth. Okay? Now, where the top of my board is and the angle of the vector here, okay, you can see that 60 degree angle. Imagine this being my line here, and it's going to have that angle coming in for the border and stuff like that. Well, if I were to measure that offset distance from the horizontally from the tip of the bit to the intersection, my offset distance is 0.0722. Okay, I know just from that, from all the text on text or stack text jobs and everything, that if I'm using an 1/8 inch bit, or I'm sorry, an 1/8 inch cut depth, and I'm using a 60 degree V bit, my offset distance for my graphics and stuff is 0.0722, right? Well, that is just to offset. That's where, from the top of my board down to the bottom of my 1/8 inch pocket, that angle of that border going around, that angle cut, coming in on all four sides, this would be representative of the bottom of my pocket. So imagine, if you will, if I drew a line here, and if I did a little bit of trimming here and here and here, this would be an example of the top of my board coming down on that nice border cut, that 1 inch border cut, to the bottom of my pocket and into whatever I've got going on inside the design, right? So that distance. Now, when my V bit comes in and I use a 60 degree 1/4 inch V bit. When my V bit comes in and starts carving and all, I don't want the grunge right up against my vector line, the original rectangle. That's this point right here. That's up at the top. That vector line that I drew, that first rectangle, that is representative by that point there, right? I don't want this V bit coming in and cutting into my border and stuff, when it's doing the grunge texture, I want to be away from that edge by a certain amount. If I have a wide 1/2 inch head, I want to make sure that I can clear that, you know, depending on my depth. I don't want to be hitting that. So for me, I'm going to cut off the grunge texture about 1/8 of an inch in from my vector. So 1/8 of an inch in from my vector. So that point there, that's where I want the, oops, that's where I want the grunge to stop. So when the bit is carving, you know, it's not going very close to my border. Hopefully that illustration or that explanation made sense to you and you understand what I'm referring to, right? So when my offset distance for the offset vector that I'm going to use for my trimming, I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch. Okay. All right, so let's get rid of that and let's come back over here and I'm going to select my rectangle and I'm going to offset inward 1/8 of an inch and I want square corners. I'm going to offset inward. Now, this new offset right here, that's going to be my trimming boundary. That's what I'm going to trim all this grunge to. I want to get rid of everything that's outside of that area. Okay? Now, let's go back and let's go back to, let's close our offset tool and go back to our trim tool here. And again, I want to select my grunge texture first. I'm going to hold down my shift key, select that offset, that inward offset last, and that's going to be my trimming boundary. And I want to trim, I want to clear everything outside of that boundary away, get rid of it. So when I clear this, okay, this is where, depending on how busy your grunge is and how complex it is and things like that, this trimming procedure, you could be sitting here for quite a moment. If we looked at the bottom of the screen where I'm sitting, let me move myself over to the right side. Bear with me just a second. Okay. If we look at the bottom of the screen down here, in the bottom left, it says collecting vector and component data, right? It's collecting all this data. So right now, it's still at 0%. Has not processed a thing just yet. Is what it's looking for. It's saying, okay, let me see what all we got going on here. So it's collecting all this data on all of this grunge texture. Okay. Then it's going to look at my procedure, my trim procedure, and it's going to say, okay, I'm trimming and clearing everything outside of this boundary away, and I've got to redraw those vectors, you know, at that boundary and everything, and delete everything. Imagine, if you will, I can't really move the screen and stuff, but imagine, if you will, just off of this grunge here, this process is going to take some time, right? Now, the I'm going to keep us moving forward for the sake of class and everything and all that. So we're going to let it process, but I am going to open up a second V Carve window so we can work with other grunges and stuff that I'm not going to trim. I could have simply resized my grunge to just fit within my boundary, right? So I'm going to stop the process for a minute. We're going to come back to the process, but I'm going to stop the process for a moment, and I'm going to move me back over to the left side of the screen. Gotta get my lighting over on the left side, right? There we go. What I mean by I could have resized, if I look at my new offset border, right? My new offset border, if I look at its current size, give me a minute. it is 21 3/4 by 9, right? Well, since I'm stretching this text or this grunge out anyway, wouldn't the smart guy come in here and select our grunge and simply resize it to 21 3/4 by 9, right? Now I don't have to trim. I don't have to wait for that long process of trimming everything. It's all done, right? Because that process, the trim process, is going to take a good 20 minutes. Something like that. You know, it's going to take a little while. It might not be 20 minutes, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take more than a minute, I'll tell you that. So the smart way to go for me is I'm going to, because I know I still have to do some trimming that I can't get around my letters or my graphic or my image or whatever it is, right? I can't avoid that. So I'd much rather pick my battles and stuff and just size the texture down to fit my trim area. Now, of course, I don't need this boundary anymore, that offset. I'm going to delete that out. And, you know, because I just used it to kind of create that boundary for my offset, right? Stand by. Bruce or Brooks, is there and talk to get Vectric to access GPUs for operations like this, right? Instead of CPUs, operate our graphics card, our graphics processor card, because it can handle rendering of video game graphics and all that stuff and everything. So if we have a decent GPU in our computer, then it would be faster. Yeah, hey, I'm sure that someone has brought up that subject. I'm sure Vectric even knows, I'm not sure. But I've never personally had the discussion with Vectric on that or anything. It might be something that to have a talk with them one day about, just to kind of think of their thought process and stuff. Yeah, maybe if it did access some of the GPU, processing would be a little less strenuous on the, on the system, right? And everything. So great question. I wanted to interrupt just for a second to answer that question, because that was a very good question. Yeah, I've never had that discussion, but I'm sure. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of Vectric customers. I'm sure somebody had to have asked that question, right? It'd be like asking, do we believe if there's life outside of Earth, out in the outer space and all, with the vast amount of universe and planets and stars and all this? It would be foolish to think that there's not life somewhere else, like we're the only one, right? I'm not going to get into that discussion, but there's thousands of Vectric customers. Somebody had to ask the question, but I may pose it and see what we do. So, long story short, is we're going to resize to here. Now, I'm not going to go back and retrim outside the vector, because we're about to do some trimming that's going to take a long time that I can't avoid if I'm using this texture. So I'd rather do it with this next coming process than the border. I'm just going to size the border down, right? Okay, so when it comes to our graphic or our design, whether it's text or image or what have you, I'm going to do a raised effect, V Carve with a flat depth of 1/8 of an inch. And so my letters are going to be raised, and then my texture is going to be in the background. So wherever my letters or my design lays out, all that grunge that's within those vectors of my letters, words, and stuff have to be removed. So we got to trim that. So let's imagine, if you will, that I am making a house sign, right? So this is going to be, we'll go, I'm going to be generic, right? We're going to go Smith And we're going to go 2012 Awesome Street. Okay. And we'll center that up. All right, now I'm going to put the grunge on its own layer so I can turn it off a minute. Okay, so I'm going to move to a layer. It's on the brick grunge layer, so I'm going to take this text and move it back to my layer 1. And let's make layer 1 active. And let's turn off the grunge for a moment. I do want, bear with me a second. I do want my border. I'm going to bring that over to layer 1 as well. So I can turn off the grunge for a moment. So I can work with my design. Now, I want to break this text block up into lines, individual lines. And I want to make Smith larger, of course. So I'm going to size Smith up. Okay. We'll go here. And the address, let's bring that down. I'm going to bring that down some, right? About like that. And let's just say, for time's sake and everything, that this is it, right? This is our design. I don't want the grunge coming right up to my fonts. So again, I want a distance away. I want an offset, a certain distance away that I'm going to be using as a clearing boundary, a trimming boundary again, like we just did. Excuse me for 1 second. And so, since I went 1/8 of an inch in on the border, I might as well, on my text, I'm going to offset outward 1/8 of an inch, and that I'll be fine with that. So we're going to go 1/8 of an inch. I'm not going to create sharp corners on this one. Just I want to select new, and I'm going to offset that. Let's go the other direction, outward, to create that boundary. Okay. Now, while that boundary is selected, okay, you see all this trash that's inside of the boundary, all those little offsets and everything. All I care about is the main outside boundary that I just created. So I am going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to turn off all of the outside boundaries that I have created. And whatever else is left selected, pink selected, I'm just going to hit the delete key to get rid of it. I don't want it. I just want that outside offset. Okay? Just want that outside offset. All right. Now I'm going to take my boundaries. And notice what I'm doing here on the screen. I'm taking my mouse, holding down the left mouse button, and I'm drawing a box from right to left. And anything my box touches, it will select. So I'm doing that so I can select all of those offset boundaries. I could do the same thing here, right to left, and just touch the top of those outside boundaries also to do that. Now in this case, I want to do both, right? So I'm going to come down here and make sure that the, I'm going to come up here and make sure that my box touches both sets. So it selects all that. And then I'm going to hit the letter G for group on my keyboard. Now the group tool is over here, fourth icon, top row of the edit objects menu, but G is the shortcut for group. I want to group those together. Okay? Cool. Now, that's going to be my trimming boundary. Now, we're going to go ahead and turn on the grunge again. Woo! Right? There's a lot of vectors there. I'm going to turn on our grunge again, and I'm going to make the grunge boundary active so that when it trims, it creates it on that layer. I'm going to create the grunge layer active so it trims on that layer. All right, so I'm going to select the grunge first, hold down the shift key. I'm going to select the grouped boundaries last, and I'm going to come over to my trim tool, and this time I'm actually clearing inside the boundary. Clearing inside the boundary. So we're going to go ahead and hit clear, and we're going to let that simmer. Put it in the crock pot and let it simmer a minute. Now, that's going to take a little bit of time to process. So in the meantime, I'm going to open up a second window so we can kind of, continue our discussion while that's processing. I'll keep an eye on it. But I'm going to create another file, another project. And for this one, again, I'm going to, I'll start off with the boundary this time. And I'm going to 0, 0 on my center. I know the answer, but I'm just going to go W minus 2 equals and H minus 2 equals to create that border again. And this time I'm going to import that corner brick texture that we had in earlier. I'm going to import that in, and I'm going to work with that on this design. And every once in a while, I'm going to go back and check my project progress and stuff on this, and we'll come back to that. It's going to take a hot minute to to process. All right, so let's come over here and grab this brick texture, and on the brick texture, I'm going to do an offset of my border again because I want that 1/8 of an inch away kind of situation again. And then I'll size it up and stuff like that. But the... give me just a moment. Waiting for Vectric. It's thinking twice as hard now, right? So I might not have thought that plan through too well, but we're going to here in just a moment, as soon as my program catches up with itself. It's still collecting sample data and everything. Come on, Vectric. Work with me here, buddy. Now you're seeing how it's testing. So I might not have thought this plan through all the way as far as being able to work on another design while the first one was processing, but we'll get through it here. It'll catch up in just a moment. While it catches up, let me answer a question here. Brooke says, by the way, Lainey, the nail polish used as enamel and acetone is excellent for removing any overflow. Yes, used as enamel, and acetone is excellent for removing any overflow of the polish and all stuff. Harvey pops in and says, I have asked Vectric if they were going to sell their USB drive on presentation and projects for the San Diego 2022 conference. They told me no. Someone else asked them if they, and they told him yes. If they were going to sell their USB drive on presentation and projects for their 2022. Normally, I don't know who told you yes, that they said yes. Normally, that conference, you got to pay to go to the conference and everything at the hotel, and you get that benefit by attending the conference and the things that are learned in there, because there's different presenters. Each presenter has their own design or project that they're working on and stuff like that. So they're not going to spend time putting something together that'll send out to people or whatever to sell and all. And Vectric usually does not either. The people who attend that event get the benefit of that event. I have not seen where they have ever sold their vectors from their event or their designs or their projects or their discussions. I've never seen where they've sold those to the public. It's only been for the event thing. So Harvey, I am not sure who told you. They said yes, but I find that highly unlikely. I'm not sure. Okay, so getting back to where we were. Bear with me. Let's see here. T Button says, Vari 11.5 includes much faster 3D modeling previews and other upgrades to do that do use graphics cards more heavily. Dang, we get spoiled over the last 2 years with online UGMs. User group meetings, yeah, for sure. And I don't know if this is gonna I don't know if this is gonna work for me the way that I want to. Okay, let's see if we can get things work with me, buddy boy. This is still collecting. Again, grunge is, it's one of those things. It's a love-hate relationship with grunge. So you have to, yeah, I've warned you guys ahead of time and stuff. It's one of those things, but it's a love-hate because of the time and process. But the results can turn out to be pretty cool, especially with the right finish and things like that. But this is still collecting vector and component data, so, yeah, we'll, all right, let's see if we have any action on this V Carve Pro. No action on this one either. This stuff is really heavy. Yeah, and T Button, if that is true, that the upgrades are going to use more graphics cards and things, that is very good news and stuff. All right, so you see these graphics here and all that. That's what my problem is. This brick and this grunge right here, all of this noise and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this, and I'm doing it in sections so it'll delete quicker. And I'm going to bring that image in and retrace it with a little bit cleaner results. Give me just a moment. Where is my corner grunge? Corner grunge. Corner grunge. And while I'm looking for my corner grunge, there it is. Let me throw that in the folder. One thing is like, you know, you see these grungy distorted or torn flags and things. We can do that as well with our grunge and all that. So let's trace this. I'm going to stay at 65. Let me turn this up here, and I'm going to bring my grunge 75. Okay. All right. Let's ungroup that, and I want to get rid of this rectangle here. Okay, so with my corner piece, it's going to be much easier to move around because it wasn't so sloppy before I traced it quickly earlier today. Now, once again, like I said, I want to offset inward my 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to create square corners because I want that boundary line, and that's going to give me kind of a reference point, you know, for my grunge, right? So I just want to kind of be here in the corner, and I'm going to size it. I'm going to pull it in this direction, and I just kind of want this half of the board. Okay, this distortion. Now I deleted that inside boundary. I just used it to give me a place to move to. Okay? All right, you guys and girls still with me? Haven't bored you to death yet? Okay. All right, now, here, I'm going to add some text in here, or, you know, some graphics or whatever it might be. In this case, it's going to be some text. And I'm going to let's go let's get that centered. I'm going to stretch this one actually a little bit. So the funny thing of it is trying to find my you know, when I'm sizing my text and stuff, trying to find that square that because it blends in. It's right here, and everything, you know, that stretches the text and stuff. Okay, so I am happy with that, I believe. I'm good. Yep. All right, let's center that up. Alignment tool, I'm going to center that up. And I'd like to add in kind of a sub. And I'm going to keep the same font and everything. And I want this right between these two Ks. Right there. All right, now, my two names, again, offset outward, just like we did a moment ago. I'm going to offset them outward. I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch. I don't want sharp corners on those. And oops, let's try that again. Offset outward. Again, I'm going to, now on the O, that's going to be my only exception. If I had an O over here where the brick is, I would want some of the texture inside that O and stuff. But if there's any miscellaneous little stuff that I don't want to deal with, like this pink right here, I'm going to turn that off. So I'm going to hold the shift key down and I'm going to turn off the outside boundaries. Okay. And in this case, I'm also going to use the O. That's a big area. I'm going to keep that one and stuff. But I'm going to turn off the outside boundaries. I'm going to hit delete on whatever else is left. You know, I don't want anything else in there. Coming back, I'm going to select the outside boundaries again, along with the inside boundary, the O. And in this case, you know, nothing on the, you know, the first part of the word is, you know, going to get trimmed or anything. There's nothing there, but I'm still including it with my selection. I'm going to group that stuff together so it's treated as one object. And I've got my grunge here that I'm going to group together. Now notice what I just did there. Notice that I could take my mouse and I could draw a mouse box from left to right this time. If you remember, earlier I went right to left. I'm going left to right this time because anything that's 100% inside of my window, it will select. Anything that's not 100%, and it will not select. And because my vectors are grouped together, they're considered one item. And since they are not 100% in that box, it won't select them. So I can select my grunge in the background. Now, if I would have went right to left, anything my box touched, it would have selected, right? So left to right, I can cross over my word Rockies and Bar and Grill, no worries, because it's only going to select what's 100% in the box, left to right. So again, I'm going to hit G to group that together. I want that treated like one item. I'm going to take my grunge. It's going to be selected first. I'm going to take my boundary. It's going to be selected last. And I'm going to trim, clearing inside the boundary away. Okay. Now, let's go back to our first design and let's see how we're making out. We are making progress. It is actually calculating, but it's only at 2%. So it is a process for sure. Now, I think I have a workaround that literally just looking at this design, I think I have a workaround that might work. So we're going to experiment with that workaround. What I mean by that, this is still kind of selecting component data, right? This is still selecting component data here. My workaround is this. I'm going to hit stop on this one. And I'm going to ungroup my selection that I just did. I'm going to ungroup it. And I'm going to do one trim area at a time. What I mean by that is I've got my vector selected here. I'm going to ungroup this grunge, and I'm going to start back here, you know, around my S, and I'm only going to select, I'm literally going to take a selection window like we did before, and I'm only going to select what gets selected here. And also hold down the shift key, this part right here, anything that's kind of in touching that S. Okay. And I'm going to group that together, just that section. Group. I'm going to take my S outline here, and I'm just going to trim and clear inside that S. I want to see if by doing a small section at a time, if it will process faster. And I'm already at 3% in the processing, 4%, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's going much faster. So I'm still sitting at 2% on this one. So I'm actually going to stop this process so it's not taking up so much of my CPU. And we're going to do one at a time. I think we're going to use that as our workaround to make things faster for us. I hadn't thought of that until just now. Like, wait, I'm trying to do all this at once. Let's do one section at a time. If it's still going to work properly, then why not? So I'm going to stop that process. And this is already at 17, 18, 19%. So we're going to let this process out. You can see that blue bar traveling across the bottom of the screen. And we're going to do one vector outline section at a time. We're going to trim one section at a time and see if, because you can see the progress across the bottom of the screen. It's moving much faster than all that time it's been sitting there not doing anything on the other side, right? So while that's processing, I'm going to come back to the other design, and again, I'm going to turn off or ungroup my individual boundaries here. I'm going to ungroup my texture, okay? And we'll start off with the H, right? So I'm going to select anything that's touching over the H, including this area here too. So literally selecting anything that's coming over the H, down here as well. Okay, I'm going to group those areas together. Not my H, sorry. Hold on a second, turn the H off. I'm going to group those vectors together. Let's select that H, and let's trim clearing inside that boundary. Okay, and let that process and everything. So this is at 38% and counting. So yeah, it's going to be much faster for us. So I believe, and this one's already at 1% and climbing and all. So that instead of it trying to figure out all, because the grunge is excessive, right? There's a lot of noise there. Instead of it trying to process all of these vectors and, okay, I've got to trim to that boundary, and then I got to redraw this vector, redraw that vector, redraw this vector, redraw this one, and I got to fit all these curves together, because that's what I have, refit curves after clipping, right? It's going to refit all those curves together and stuff and close all those vectors up. That's a lot for it to process. We've been sitting here talking. I've been filling space with air, right? Talking for the last 20 minutes or so because it's been taking so long to process. This, we're already at 4%, so we're higher than we were, right? It's going to be much faster for us. Now, we have to do it with each section, but still, it's going to come up to be more faster. Let it focus on one thing at a time. So this is at 61%, 62, so on and so forth. So one of these will finish first, and then we'll move on to the next. There's not a whole lot on this one. This is only half the texture, so I'm only going to have to do this a couple more times. And since the areas are going to be smaller, it'll be quicker. So especially like the bar and grill part and things like that. So hang tight. And we're at 72%, so moving right along. Things are going good. Yes, yeah. So they're showing enhancements and all for the 11.5. I'm a big advocate of keeping your software up to date, but some people, you just, especially Aspire and all, it's expensive and things like that. But the enhancements, they usually on the major 11, 11.5, 12, 12.5, those major updates, not the patch repairs in between, but the major updates, they usually add some pretty cool stuff. So I haven't even seen what's out, what's new, what's coming to be new and stuff like that. I'm going to be doing my homework on that because, of course, I have to be prepared for it, for training and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what 11.5, what little gems it has to offer. All right, so 95% on this trim, and 97, 98, 99, and 100. So, okay, so it's re-cleared of that and everything. All right, I didn't have that vector selected. We'll do that again. Let me do that real quick. Bear with me just a second. Let me make sure none of my vectors are open. Bear with me just a moment. Select all open vectors. None. Okay, just want to make sure. Let's select this, and clear. All right. Now, we have a stubborn Sally here. Okay, this vector, this little Rick vector, is not wanting to clear inside the S here. You see that? So I am done with the S. I'm done with the S. I've already trimmed. I have to delete this vector anyway. Okay, I have to delete this vector anyway. So I might as well take my scissors and just trim, getting rid of everything that is not going to be used, right? So I might as well come in and trim. I'll get rid of the open vectors that I'm creating anyway, but I'm going to come in here and trim this away. Trim that away. Oops, hold on a second. I need that. Trim that away. And that. So basically that brick area gets redrawn right there. Okay. And then on the back side here, that's redrawn there. And then all the rest of my S I can go ahead and delete. Okay. All right, so now I do want to take a second because I do have some trash right here. Bear with me a moment. Select all open vectors, and this one right here, it's supposed to trim right there and there. So let me undo that last delete that I just did. I trimmed the wrong line like a goofball. This line was supposed to be trimmed right there. Okay, that stays. This is all one closed vector, so I got to pay attention to what I'm trimming and what I'm not trimming and all that and stuff. This gets deleted. Let me go in and use my scissors again. Oops. Hold on a second. Stay ahead of the game. Okay, trim that away. And that away. And that away. Okay. So, once again, this outside brick there, and then over here, this vector is closed, so this one gets deleted. And that is part of the brick too. All right, so the S is done. Okay, so you got to pay attention to what I almost messed myself up where I had a bunch of open vectors and all. So now if I select open vectors, all open vectors, I can hit, I've got 2 right up here. So I hit delete to get rid of them. And now I should have none in my design, right? Keeping it clean. So once again, now I'm going to take and do the K and the Y, the boundary, they're together, right? They're together. It's all one vector when the outside boundary was created. So I'm going to take my grunge that is kind of covering the K and the Y and everything, and all, make sure anything that's inside of it is selected and stuff. turn off the KY and the apostrophe, group that together, and then select that last and trim, clear inside the boundary. Okay, let that go through and process. Now, while that's doing that, let's go over and check out our progress over here. 36%. So we're still moving along. Still a lot of grunge. Still moving along, but 37%. So it's still getting there. It's just not there yet. But that is going to be the way to go. So let me just say this. That's going to be the way to go. One section at a time. Right? One section at a time. It's going to be the way to go. Now, the next trim that we do, I'm going to not group the grunge together. Okay, I'm not going to group it together as one thing. And we're going to see how that affects things. Okay, we're going to see if grouping, normally I teach grouping it all together before you trim. But this is this is the lesson. We're going to see if, do we need to group it? How will it trim? Is it faster? Is it better? Is it whatever? If it's doing them all individual instead of one group, those kind of things, we're going to see that. We're at 16% moving along here, 17 and all, so 18, so it's climbing, and we'll get there. So it's a marathon, not a sprint for sure. And I know for most businesses, we are doing a sprint, time is money, that kind of thing. But there's going to be those projects, these off projects. You're not going to be doing it, all the time unless it's something you got to specialize in. Jamie, she had it down, and I don't know. I don't think time was too critical for her as far as that goes, because she enjoyed just the design phase of it. And she really didn't kind of count that. It was the carving and all this, but we want to try to keep things down to a minimum, right? Time is time, right? So whatever options work, that's what we want to kind of deal with. And I had one vector that wasn't selected. I wasn't paying attention. So I'll select that in just a moment and trim. I'm not going to go back. It's already at 36%. It's moving along. We'll let it go. And after these two signs, now I'm going to work these two signs. We're going to create the tool paths on them so you can see them. That will be the end of the class. So we're going to wrap up on that. I just want you to kind of see, how things could look, or the cool things that we could do with grunge or distortion and stuff. We're gonna create the toolpath for that welcome sign so you can see it again, the one that we had showing in the beginning. We're gonna create the toolpaths for these two signs if we can get them trimmed up in a timely manner. We're at 50% right now on this. We only have one or two more to do, and then excuse me, and then we're gonna call it a night. So hopefully you pick something up out of this, and something that you give a try at least once, maybe, try it out. And again, we're looking for distressed vectors, grunge vectors, distressed wood grain, crackled paint vectors, these kind of things. When we're searching for our Google search or whatever for our graphics and stuff, those terms, distressed vectors, grunge vectors, crackled paint vectors, those kind of terms are what we want to search for to find these cool effects and grunges and stuff like that. Paint splatter vectors. I've got a few cool paint splatter vectors and all that, would be like, let's say if Rockies didn't have that brick, I might have paint splatter over the S and the Y. So, of course, they would have to be cleared about, and also the S and the Y would be covering that paint splatter that's shooting up into the top corner. It's got a neat look to it and stuff, but all kinds of fun things that you can do. All right, so you're welcome, Brooks. All right, so we're at 76% and counting, as 77. So it's moving right along. You guys can't see the timer because it's right behind me, but it's 78, so it's coming along. That's finishing up. Let's take a peek over at our other design. That's at 56%. This one's going to take a little bit more time. One, because we're doing 2 at a time, but we're almost done with Rockies, so we'll be able to get into toolpathing on that in just a matter of minutes here. And then, if y'all haven't eaten dinner, you can go eat dinner. I'm going to go eat dinner. I haven't eaten all day. I think I had lunch. I think, can't remember, but go chow down on some rice and chicken and dumplings. All right, 90%, 91, 92, so it's almost done, and we can move on to the next set of vectors. I had some vectors down here that weren't even part of the anything. So 97, 98, 99, and 100. Okay. All right, so for the most part, those got done. Now, I did have some vectors here that still cross in front of the XYZ down here. So it's one big continuous vector. You can see I just literally just clicked on this, and it was all of that, right? So I'm going to have that selected. I'm going to come in and select my boundary again. Not that boundary. Not that boundary. That boundary again, and I'm going to clear inside. That was very quick, right? One simple vector, very good. All right, now I can take my boundary and delete it, get rid of it. So now you can see the K, Y, and apostrophe, you know, is clear, right? The distortions, the distress is not around it. All right, so all we have now is the C. Now this time I'm not going to, remember, I'm not going to group the vectors, okay? I'm going to just select the vectors that are overlapping the C. I'm going to select my boundary last, and I'm going to clear inside the boundary. Okay? That raced along pretty quickly. Maybe it's only because it was a small amount of vectors, but we're going to find out here on the grill. So C is done, so I can go ahead and delete that offset. Remember, I'm clearing out the offset because it's only being used as a trim boundary. Once I've trimmed, I'm done with that boundary, so I get it out of the way so I can see what I've got going on here. I don't have to do any trimming on the O, so I can get rid of the O's boundaries, inside boundary, and I don't have any trimming on the R, so I can get rid of that. I have no trimming on the bar, so I can get rid of that. And the and has no trimming and get rid of that. So the only thing left is grill. So again, I'm going to select the vectors that play a role with the word grill here. And I'm going to not group them together. Let's select this brick here as well. Not going to group them together. I'm going to select the outline of grill last. Oops, hold on. I got one more vector right there. I want to get everything in this shot. Okay, select that border last, and let's clear. Let's see how fast we go. Let's see if we what it does for us. You can see, you'll see that blue bar at the bottom of the screen traveling right along, moving right along. So it's going to trim correctly. I don't need to group them before I trim them, so that's a key thing. Ronnie, how long will it take to carve? We'll find out when we create the toolpaths. I can't guess it right now, but we're literally a step away from creating the toolpath, so we'll be able to check and see how long it's going to be. So 83, 85, you can see that blue line moving right along. And there we go. Okay. So now again, I can trim that or get rid of that boundary. And now my sign is ready for tool pathing. So running this, we're ready for tool pathing now. So for my tool path, I'm going to select Rockies, bar and grill, and my border. And it's going to be a V Carve toolpath with a flat depth, and I'm going to use an 1/8 of an inch flat depth. My 60-degree V-bit, and I am going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. I typically tend to find myself using 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch so I can get in tighter between the lines and stuff. But you can just use one or the other. Doesn't have to be both. But for me, I am going to add my 1/8 inch end mill in there as well. So the 1/4 will do a majority of everything. The 1/8 will get in a little bit tighter, and then our V-bit will finish up. But I am going to be rastering this like wood grain back and forth. I want to carve with the grain, and we're going to calculate this toolpath. Okay. All right, so if we preview this toolpath, and let's turn off the color for a minute here, we have basically this raised text, right? So that's where we're at so far. Now, when it comes to the grunge texture, you can do it a lot of different ways. You can do it as a profile cut where the bit is cutting on the lines and everything. You could do it as a V Carve cut where it's cutting between the lines. You could, yeah, one of those two, right? I'm going to do it both ways, and we're going to see which one looks better. I believe, personally, the V Carve one's going to look better than the profile one, but we'll let you be the judge, okay? So the first one we're going to do is we're going to do it as a profile. We're going to start at an 1/8 of an inch, okay? That's where the pocket already is. We're going to use, I'm going to use the 60-degree V-bit for this. My 1/4 inch white side 60-degree V-bit. And I'm going to be carving on the line. Okay? And we're going to calculate that toolpath. There are some duplicate vectors that were identified. We'll get rid of those and everything, but for now it's going to ignore them. And we're going to preview this toolpath. Now, first off, it would help if I put in an actual cut depth. We're not cutting 0.010 of an inch. Let's go ahead and let's go. We're starting at an 1/8 of an inch, and let's cut 1/16. It's going to ignore those duplicates. We'll get rid of those in just a moment. But let's preview that visible toolpath. Okay, so if we look at this, the profile cut is following all the lines, right? It's going around the lines and everything. And to me, I don't like it. Some grunge, the profile does really well. Some grunge, not so well, right? So profile cut for me is out, just from the looks of it right here. Definitely does not look good to me at all. So let's reset this. Let's go back to our raised design and clear out the background. Now we're going to do the grunge as a V Carve, which is going to be the method that I recommend for most of the grunge, but there's going to be that occasion where it's going to be a profile and stuff and everything. So before we do our V Carve, I do want to take a second and right click on the screen, and I want to go and find all the duplicate vectors. And I just told it to select the duplicate vectors, and on the screen I can't really see them. I see it right here, but you can't. So if I click on zoom selected, because I just told it to select those duplicate vectors, if I zoom selected, it will zoom in to that selected vector so you can find it, right? Just like if I said search for all open vectors and I couldn't see them off the, immediately, I could zoom into the selected area and it would pull it to it. So this vector has a duplicate, meaning there's more than one, so I'm going to delete that. I want to see a nice white background behind that dotted line and everything. And there were two of them on top of each other. So if I right click and select all duplicate vectors, there should be none in my design now, right? Nice and clean. All right, once again, let's go ahead and select our boundary here, and let's do a V Carve toolpath. We're going to start at 1/8 of an inch. Okay. We're going to not set any limit. Flat depth is not a cut depth, it's a limit. No limit on this. No end mills, just straight up V-bit. We're going to calculate this toolpath. Okay. Now, this is saying that some of the vectors may contain overlaps or intersections. Let's go to the vector validator and find them, or continue anyway. I do want to find those. So I'm going to go to the vector validator, and I'm going to search those selected. And what we have is, we have some zero length spans, meaning that there are nodes together, that there's no span or line, arc, or carve in between. We have 2 of those, so I'm going to go ahead and clear those out. And then I'm going to come in and search the selected again. And these areas here, where we see these intersections and stuff, that is going to be some of my grunge that I didn't have selected when I did the trim of my boundary here, where some of the grunge is sitting on top of that line, right? So I have a choice. I can delete that grunge, or I can simply just use my arrow key and move it away from it, right? You know, keep that grunge in there. I want that texture in there. I just want to get it off the line and everything. In this case, this one is actually drawn in to the vector. So I have to go into here and trim that away. Now, when I trimmed that away, let me undo that. This closed vector here, let's go into node editing so we can really see what's happening here. This vector, let's go down to the start point. It has, if I move it out to the side, right here, it has this line that is intersecting, you know, here, right? So I want to get rid of that, and I'll keep this little bit of distortion right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this point, so that way the line just kind of comes around here instead of being folded up on itself. All right, let's go back to the vector validator. Bear with me a second. Let's go back into there and search it again. So again, up here, we have a bit of a grunge texture. I just want to move it off the line. Okay. We have one here. I'm just going to move it off the line. I want to keep it in there, right? You know, I want to keep that in there and all. I'm just going to, and I don't care where I move it to. I'm just getting it off the line, right? Or I could just say, screw it and leave it there, right? And just click continue instead of going to the vector validator. Either way, I just want to address it, right? So let's search the selected again, and we have none. We're all clean. Let's go back and calculate our toolpath, okay? So V Carve toolpath starting at 1/8 of an inch, cutting down 1/8 of an inch, and it still says I have something going on here. Let's go to the vector validator and figure out what it is. Still, I missed one. Sorry, I missed one. All right, now this one here, I'm just going to bump it off the line. There we go. All right. Final time. Let's calculate. There we go. So going in and taking the time to clean it up, no problem. We just wanted to get it off the lines and everything. And that's because when I trimmed it, I didn't have certain vectors selected and stuff. Now this right here is saying, hey, it's going to cut through, right? I'm going to set a flat depth. I don't want to cut through. So flat depth, you can see where it's cutting through, you know, on that brick and all. So I don't want that. So we're going to go in and set a flat depth. Bear with me just a second. To limit the cut, I don't want to carve very deep. I'm just going to go another 1/8 of an inch. And I actually am, because the brick areas, some of these bigger brick areas and stuff are going to get carved away. So I'm going to use an end mill, and I'm going to use an 1/8 inch end mill to help clear up some of that flat area. And I'm going to recalculate that. Okay. As that's calculating, let's take a peek. And our H finally finished. So yeehaw with that. Our H is done, and you know, we'll come over. We'll focus on this one in just a moment. Let's go ahead and preview our Rocky sign, because we're almost done with it, and then we can answer some questions like how long it's going to take to carve and all that stuff. All right, so let's preview the visible toolpath. Okay, and if we were to look here and everything, let's add some color in there. Whatever, not on that. Sorry. Add some color in here, and I'm going to go with a kind of a slate gray. Okay, now we're going to do this here in just a second. We're going to do this one more way. All right, so this is option 2 as a V Carve. Now, what I'd actually like to see is, and that's fine that the brick is there, but what I'd actually like to see is I'd like to see the grout of the brick carved, and you know, and not opposite like what I'm seeing here. Okay, so we're going to come in here, and we're going to, I'm going to draw a rectangle the same size as my area here. I'm going to go right up to there. And I got it the same size as my border, right on top of it, because I'm using it as a boundary to reverse this cut. So, V Carve toolpath, start depth of 1/8 of an inch, flat depth of 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to have not only this new rectangle that I just created, but I'm also going to have my brick selected as well. And now when I calculate this toolpath, and yeah, hopefully it doesn't tear up my border too bad on this side. We'll find out. We'll find out. Okay, let's reset that background. All right, and then we're going to, did I not have, oh, Laney, bear with me just a minute. My my rectangle, when it was selected, the word Rockies was in there still. We don't want to carve the word Rockies. So, Laney, okay, how do we deal with that? So here's what we do. To make things easier, I'm going to move that rectangle, the small rectangle I created, to a new layer. And I'm going to call this toolpath square. Not very unique, but I'm going to take the word Rocky here and also bar and grill, Rocky and bar and grill, and I'm going to copy those to that layer also. I'm going to come in here and on that layer, let's turn off the toolpath here. I need to create my vector boundary. So Rocky, and I'll remember it was earlier, it was offset 1/8 of an inch outward for the trim boundaries earlier, right? We're going to use those trim boundaries again. So the word Rockies I don't need, I can delete that. And the word bar and grill I don't need, I can delete that. But what I do need is this. So anything outside of this boundary gets removed. So these vectors here are, get removed. Take my scissors and trim this away and this away, and that away, that away, and that away. Anything outside of that boundary gets removed. Everything inside of it stays. Now, let's come in here and turn our design back on. And our design here, let's get back to our border and stuff like that. I'll leave the border off for a minute, but that boundary and our vector, we're going to V Carve toolpath that one more time. Calculate. This way, when it calculates and stuff, we don't have to, our letters Rocky, our CKYS apostrophe S is not going to get milled away. Now, I'm going to stop this calculation because one very important thing, you saw the vector validator message pop up and it was saying about overlaps and stuff like that and everything. And what that was is, remember my trim boundary was 1/8 of an inch. So when I created that new rectangular border, this guy right here, let's turn everything else off. This guy right here, I made this outline the same as that 1/8 of an inch that our text was, you know, that our grunge got trimmed to, right? I don't want that. So I'm not thinking properly. When I do this offset here, let me get rid of that. On my text and all, I'm going to go 0.10 of an inch less than what my grunge was. I don't want to have to retrim my grunge. So on here, I'm going to go just 0.10 of an inch less. So when I offset, I'm going to go offset 0.115 instead of 125. And again, I'm going to get rid of the actual text that I copied. That's a copy, not my original. I'm going to get rid of anything that's outside of the boundary, and I'm going to trim away everything else just like we did. Okay. Now, when we bring our design back in and stuff, you can see that my grunge is now 10% away from, 0.10 of an inch away from that border, right? So that there's no overlaps. All right, here we go. Let's calculate this one more time so we can move on. Calculating. Starting at 1/8 of an inch, we're cutting another 1/8 of an inch. And we put this boundary around it so that it creates a reverse effect. So once again, this is our raised design with nothing in the background. And now this is with the reversed brick look, where the grout lines are getting, oops, I keep doing that, where our grout lines are getting the grunge effect. And I'm just going with a gray instead of a black, where our grout lines and our brick are getting the effect and everything in there. And stuff, where it kind of looks like that, partial black, brick wall. Might not be something that appeals to you. You might not like the way it looks, whatever the case may be, but I'm just kind of giving you some things to think about. Now, it's 9:06. Let's go ahead and let's look at the time, how long it's going to take for this to carve, and then let's go back and let's see how quickly we can get rid of get our other design done. So our flat area clearance and our grunge effect. The total run time on this, Robert, who asked that question, you're looking at about 2 hours and 2 minutes. Okay. So 39 minutes for the 1/4 inch in the middle to do that flat area around the whole design. 3 minutes for the 1/8 inch bit to do its little touch up. 15 minutes for the V Carve to do around the raised letters. 7 minutes for the clearing of the grunge effect, and another 55 minutes to engrave that, that grunge area and stuff. So, a total of about 55 areas. Now, if you don't want, notice here that my border, right, I cut into my border there. I'd actually need to offset that vector inward a little bit by that 1/8 of an inch. Here, and I would need to trim my grunge properly, because I did cut into my border there. You can see the black where the black is. But if you didn't want this straight line, this defining straight line right here, because remember, it is going to be cutting an 1/8 of an inch deep. If you didn't want that straight line there and everything, go in there and kind of, funk it up a little bit, distort it some in things, so it's not so straight, so it has a little bit of character to it and stuff. Mix it up, and stuff, so it's not so straight defined. But my right here, this boundary is the same as my border, so it cut in and everything, and all. So the what am I trying to say? The router bit did come and cut along that border there, and I'm not going to change this and all. What I am going to do, however, is I'm going to take my border here, and I'm just going to offset it outward by that 0.115. I'll just go 1/8 of an inch just to make life easy. Outward, sharp corners, delete the original, offset that, and now it's not going to be on that line, right? And so if I were to very quickly recalculate this, now if I want this raised as well too, I could also do that raised with the letters of Rocky and everything also, where Rocky's like embedded into the brick. But I don't want to do that right this second. We're messing around too much. Let's take Rocky's Bar and Grill. Let's calculate that toolpath. Yes, you can add texture to a flat cut. You don't have to do the raised. This could all be flat, and I'll show you that here in just a second. It doesn't have to be raised. I'm just doing it as a raised design just to show. Preview visible toolpath, and then I'll recalculate this with just a V Carve no raise. And then on the texture here, calculate that. All right, preview that visible toolpath. Okay, and again, if you did not want that straight line there and everything, wiggle it up a little bit, you know, change it up and stuff like that. Okay, now as a flat design, if I were doing this as a flat design, a flat carving and everything, I would take my outer boundary here, okay, and I would come in such as this. I would go into node editing mode. I would take these two nodes and move them up over my outside of my border. If I'm doing this as a flat design, I would take these two nodes and move them to the right past my border. I would take these two nodes and move them down past my border. And I would take my scissor tool and I would trim this and that away. Hold on a minute. That. And give me just a minute. I need that. I think that's what I want to do. Let me see. V Carve toolpath. No flat depth. Well, let me think here. If I want the grout line, I have to set a flat depth. Yeah. Okay. So if I want the grout line carved, I'm going to set a flat depth starting at 0. Right. I'm going to limit the cut to 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Calculate. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. It's calculating. 914. Okay, and V Carve toolpath, no flat depth, calculate. All right, reset the preview, preview the visible toolpath. Okay, now this made the brick raised. Okay, that made the brick raised. If I wanted to just carve it in, all the grunge in without having that raised look. Let me zoom out here. So that would be that. If I painted that, it would look like that. You know? If I didn't want it raised, let me undo something here. Undo. I'm just going to get rid of that boundary. And get rid of the other boundaries. And just V Carve toolpath this. I'm sure there's quite a few ways that it could be. Let that calculate, and then we'll move over to the other one. All right, let me see what we have here. Laney, can you add texture to the flat within the V Carve? Yeah, so if it was just a flat sign, we could. Sorry, my bad. Can texture the flat depth? Yeah, that's what I think that's what we're doing, is we're texturing the flat depth. If I understand what you mean. Can you add texture too? Yeah, that's what yeah, this carves it in to where the you know, they have the sign here. So I don't know, whichever way kind of looks best and all. Let's go back and let's see our other design. And Brooks, can you rephrase that whole entire question? Think about and rephrase that whole question, because I'm not sure. What we just did, what we've been doing for the last half hour, is adding texture to the flat depth within the flat area on the back of the raised area. So I might be misunderstanding what you're asking. Let's go look at our other design. Let this save so I can close out of it. Okay, close out of this. All right, now we're going to try to tackle this as quickly as possible. I'm going to see what all I can trim very quickly, clearing inside of our boundaries. Let's see here. I want to make sure that anything that's crossing over the boundary is selected. I want to make sure that boundary is selected last. And I want to clear that out. One %, 2, 3. It's moving along. We should be wrapping up here in about 20 minutes. We should be able to get. I should be able to get these other 3 letters, and then the street address very quickly. The street address is small, so that shouldn't take very long. 9, 10%. You can see the blue line starting to come behind me now on the screen, and. All right, so Brooks, while that's calculating, we're going to try to answer your question here. So, when the clearance bit removes, remove the 1/8 of an inch of the V Carve, can you make the pocket textured? Does that make sense? So, when we do a flat depth, on that raised sign and everything, when we had that Rockies raised and we had that back area carved down 1/8 of an inch, that texture area, we can texture that whole background. You start at 1/8 of an inch and you cut down however deep you want that texture to be. That's what we did with that brick. So that's exactly what we were doing, Brooks. That's what we did. Now, what's puzzling me and why I'm so confused is I'm like, okay, that's what we were doing, but he's asking the question. So why would he ask the question if that's what we were doing? What did I miss? What am I missing? Because we were carving the texture in the background on that flat depth of the 1/8 of an inch. I am not getting I'm not getting your question. I'm not evidently not reading it correctly. 40% it's processing. We had a 0 start depth, 1/8 of an inch flat depth for the raised letters of the word Rocky, and then that background, that flat depth, the bottom of that pocket was textured with the brick. So all right, guys, help me out if anybody understands or maybe understands what he's asking, Brooks, or because I'm not. That's what we were doing. That's what we've been doing for the last half hour. So did I miss something? Did I do something? Did I not explain it right? What the hell? When the clearance bit remove the 1/8 of an inch of the V Carve, when the clearance bit removes the 1/8 of an inch of the V Carve, can you make the pocket textured? Does that make sense? Okay, all right, he says, okay, but the second V Carve has a flat depth. Is he asking the texture inside the V Carve? So, Brooks, are you saying remove the flat depth altogether? If I did that, it would have carved the brick all the way through. I have to set a flat depth. Next layer, you're good on the amount. 81%. So the tea's almost done, and we can move on. As long as you offset the texture the 1/8 of an inch down. Yes. Can you texture the flat depth section? Now, are you talking about using the grunge texture, or are you actually using the texturing toolpath? Because yes, we can texture that flat area, that flat depth section. I will. I'll demonstrate that here in just a second. Okay, so the T is clear. We are good. We have a few vectors that I didn't have selected. Everything else is good. This one, let me just trim this real quick. There we go. All right, so I can get rid of that boundary now. All right, let's take a second here and let's answer this quick question. I'm going to take the word Smith, and I'm going to take my boundary, and I'm going to create a V Carve toolpath. 0 start depth, 1/8 of an inch flat depth. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill and an 1/8 inch end mill. And I'm going to calculate this toolpath. I'm going to do it as a raster cut. Now, on a regular sign, this is, I'm Brooks and everything. This is my flat depth, right? The 1/8 of an inch. Now, I have a texturing toolpath. If I want to texture this back area, I have a texturing toolpath that I can start at that 1/8 of an inch down, and I can offset away from my borders and everything an 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to use a ball nose bit, and I can calculate and create a texture, a regular texture, randomized texture based on these numbers and variables and everything. It's calculating, it's calculating, it's calculating. Well, carving, it's only a 2-hour carve, Troy. It's the designing and stuff. And if I create the visible toolpath, you know, I can add a texture in that flat depth, Brooks. I can add a texture to the flat depth. Okay? Now, that's exactly what we were doing with the brick a moment ago. The brick was the texture in the background. Now that other flat area under the RO of Rockies and all, if I wanted to add some texture over there, I could do that. I would just have to create a boundary for it to carve in. And how I would create that boundary for it to carve in would be, I would take a rectangle and I would draw it out. Let's say it was over the SISTH here, SMI. I would take that and I would take my offset boundaries. Just going to do Smith and all. I'm going to copy them or move them to a new layer so I can turn everything else off. Actually, I don't want to move them. I want to copy them. Let me undo that. I want to copy them, not move them. All right, and let me turn off everything. So let's say I have this. Anything outside of this boundary would need to be removed. There's nothing outside of this boundary. So I would come in here and with this selected, I would create my texture. Whatever it is, I can create it. It could be, I could use the grunge, I could use whatever. I'm only doing the brick on the one side and everything. And I could choose to texture any side that I want and everything. So if I didn't want that, you know, on the Rockies, if I didn't want that flat, and of course my border was wrong, but that's okay. If I didn't want that flat and I wanted to add some kind of texture or something on that side, I could. I just need to create the vectors to do that. Okay. So I think that's what you were asking. I think because of that smooth side of Rockies, you're like, hey, can we add some kind of rough texture on that side? Yes, we can. We just have to create the vectors to do it. Okay. Let's get back to our design here. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Now, our next bit of grunge, let me get rid of this rectangle here. Our next bit of grunge is going to do the M and the I. So I want to select anything that is outlining that M in the eye. I want to turn off that vector and then turn it back on and clear that away. Let that process. So hopefully I got that right. Hopefully, Brooks, I got that right on the second time around. And I understood what you were saying. It took a minute. I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking of the texture that we were doing on one side because I didn't, didn't want anything on the other side. But hopefully that's what. I'm in a class, but first off, unlock your E-stop, turning it clockwise, letting it pop out and unlock, and then push your green button in. If it doesn't stay engaged, then you need to replace your E-stop. The replacement part is on our website, digitalwoodcarver.com. Okay, sorry about that. I had to answer a quick voice message. So this is processing 4.5. When we get into the smaller stuff, it'll be a little bit quicker. We only have the S to do, and then we can move on and wrap this up. Hopefully we'll be done in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So stick with me. We're almost there. Troopers that y'all are. And we'll knock this out. So 5%, it's working its way around. So from what I have experienced in the past versus now, definitely segmenting it out and selecting certain areas at a time to trim away and everything is much quicker, for sure. It definitely, normally if I was doing it the other way where I was doing it all at once, I would process it and then I would go eat lunch or something and then come back and hope it was done. But I have a strange feeling that we'd have been sitting here for quite some time with this. These textures are new. I haven't used them. I haven't gone in and used them before, so I didn't really know how long. Most of my other textures, I know that when I use it that it's going to take this long to process. So wait it out. But this, I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. I just thought of it with a class like, well, wait, why don't we just do one section at a time? And it's working. So if it works, it works. Definitely much faster than my past texturing experiences. So 11, 12%. So it's moving along. See that blue line behind me? It's coming along. But Vectric, if you're watching, make this faster. All right. So hopefully you're all still awake and good to go. I am waiting. I'm waiting to devour the biggest plate of chicken and dumplings and rice. It's a southern staple, I think. I don't know if it's just the South that have chicken and dumplings or if everybody does. I don't know. I don't travel that much. But, oh my goodness. It's on when this class is over. I'm starving. Oh my goodness. We are this one. Little bit slower. There's a lot of little vectors in there and stuff. It's at 16%. Not moving as fast as the others, but 17, 18. So it's moving, but just not as fast as the others. The S should be very quick, and the small bar and grill should be, with being such a smaller area, less fonts and all, should be quicker as well too. Now this one, we're simply doing a. I'm gonna do the raised text again, and bear with me just 1 second. Okay, again, I'm in a class. I will go in and change the inventory. We're not sold out. I'll change the inventory on the website after the class. The class will end around 10 o'clock, so you can order it after 10. All right. But 21%, so we're moving along now. It's starting to think. We're going to do a raised design on this one with the texture engraved into the background with a V Carve. Profile cut, I'm not a fan of. You could try it that way. Certain designs, like I said, it might benefit from that, but all the ones I've ever done have always been V Carve because it makes the texture look more like the grunge texture, like it's just been beat up, distorted, and everything. So now, while that is calculating 24%, 25%, it's moving along. While that is calculating, I can go ahead and import this thumbnail design. 25, 26%, that's moving along. I can size this down to there we go. This particular texture is a crackle paint texture, and if we preview that, this is also going to be a V Carve, just like I said. Just the 60-degree V-bit. It's going to start at 1/8 of an inch, and there's not going to be any flat depth beyond that. It's going to just start at 1/8 of an inch. And There's one open vector in that particular design. It's a little line. Gonna leave it as is. 32%, so it's moving along on the other design. We're gonna get there. We can do it. This, I just wanted to show you the toolpath and show you what the crackled paint effect looks like. Right. So I like the crackled look. Let's get back to here. 36%, still sitting at 36%. It's moving along. So that's that welcome sign. So it's a simple paint crackle vector, you know, crackle vector, paint cracks. Distressed paint vector. So all these search terms to find those, you know, neat graphics and things. You know, to use as any kind of grunge or background, distressed grain, distressed wood grain vector, that type of thing. So just wanted to show that off. Okay, let's go ahead and close out of that and get back to our design. Let's see here. Should I make some coffee? Yeah. Let's see. We eat them here in Michigan. Yummy. Yes. Never had a dumpling. Harvey. If you ever, I don't, you know, Harvey, if you ever make it to the States, because Harvey, are you in Canada, Harvey? Let me know where you are, Harvey. I don't know why I think you're in Canada. But if you ever make it to the States, dumplings is good. Dumplings, steamed, boiled, or deep fried. Chicken wrapped in dough. Best guess. Yep. Basically, no. Chicken breast shredded, you know, or you know, chopped up, you know, not too finely and everything. And then dumpling would be like biscuit dough dumpling, you know, biscuit dough, boiled. It creates the dumplings. It also creates some nice juices and stuff. And then you add your chicken broth and your chicken in there. And yeah, it's. I'm not a chef. But my aunt has a phenomenal recipe for chicken and dumplings that I grew up on, and every once in a while when I visit family and stuff, I get the treat of that. But I had my mother surprised me with some rice and chicken and dumplings, so can't argue with mom's cooking at all. No matter how old I get, I'm 48 years old and still love mama's cooking. I have to say that. There's some recipes I don't like, but for the most part it's good. Yeah, John, there you go. Now, I've never had a gizzard, so I don't know what that's all about. 46%. We're getting there. We got 15 more minutes before 10 o'clock. Can we knock this out? Will Vectric surprise us? 47%, 48%. It's coming along. Will Vectric take us to the championship? Because once we get the texture done, then I can just simply create the tool pass. The S should be quicker. It's by itself and everything. It should be faster. And then the 2012 Awesome Street The address is much smaller, so it should be quicker as well. We'll know here in just a few minutes. 50%. So it's moving along. You can see that blue line at the bottom. You can track it just like I am. But yeah, never had a gizzard. Now, my grandmother, I think she used to make gizzards and all that stuff and everything. I've never had them. I always turned that down when it was offered. But I've never had like liver and onions or anything like that. All the weird parts, tripe, none of that stuff. But I used to run away from that as a kid, and I still do as an adult. And it's stupid. They're probably delicious, right? Who knows? I'm probably missing out, and things. All right, so we're getting along here. Come on, 53%. See if we can beat the clock to 10. We're only just a few more minutes away. I know this was a long, drawn-out class. Thanks for hanging out with me during this. I hope you don't get discouraged by textures and how long it takes to process and things like that. Play along with them, play around with them and everything. Some effects, you can really get some really neat background effects rather than your just normal texturing toolpath and your other texturing tools. This is just another way to create a nice distorted looking background to kind of just give it the an effect and everything. I know Jamie used to use her airbrush, like an airbrush. I want an airbrush so bad for airbrushing signs and stuff like that, designs and all, after carving. But she used to use her airbrush, and she would, she would make her texture, like if it was that crackled paint, I mean, you would almost think it's like it's crackled paint. She was really good. Shadows and all that stuff and everything, and then, that her her design on top of that and stuff. But she was really, really good. I wish I had finishing skills, like really high class ones. Some people could take the texture, the crackled paint background with the right shadows and the right, airbrush and stuff, and the time, they could probably make it look like you could almost peel the paint chips right off the back of it. You know what I mean? There's people that have that kind of skill. 60%. Oh, Blue Knight. No, that's okay, bud. Pickled eggs. I stayed away from that too, and pickled eggs too. Never had a pickled egg, but yeah. So never had any of that stuff. And I live in the South, right? You would think, man, I thought y'all grew up on that shit. No, excuse my language, but no, I'd stay away from that one. The new shop isn't going. It's brutal. So, it's been a hard couple of months for me, guys. With digital carver sales being down, and just that's why I'm always pushing go buy models. It helps out and stuff like that and everything, and all. I had a big 80% off sale, which a lot of you participated in, which thank you very much for that. But it's honestly, it's being all transparent. I mean, I have nothing to hide in my life and stuff like that. But the last couple of months, I've been drowning in a hole. My bank account right now is negative $1,726. My PayPal account is negative $500 and something. Bills are just coming in, and not, I can't pay them. Whatever money I get, like all the sales that I did get in September on the website on the models and stuff, that literally gets deposited right in the bank, so it's covering some of that. But with the 2 deaths in the family that I had to help cover with the medical expenses, my aunt and my grandfather, and sales being down, and then just life piling on top of me, I've been drowning and all. So their finances for the building aren't there right now. They had to be put towards other things. So I'm climbing my way out. Every project I got some projects. By the way, there's some new flags and stuff on the website. Flags and Halloween projects. They're vectors, simple V Carve signs. $20 for a pack of flags, $10 for the Halloween signs, and if you buy them together and you use the coupon code VectorCell5, you get $5 off, and you get both of them for $25. So I'll verify that coupon code, but it's been so every bit of, that's why I'm doing every other month, every other. I had to start door dashing to try to make some income, but it's a struggle. So I'm just like everybody else. I'm not sitting in a golden throne or anything like that. I'm a poor country boy and just trying to do the best I can to get by and survive for me and my family and stuff, and it's been tough. So the building Blue Knight, yeah, it is a sore subject, but it's not happening right now. Right now, I'm just trying to not drown. I'm trying to keep that brave face on for my family and all that, when deep down I want to just crawl into a corner and give up, but you can't do that. Got to man up, not give up. So I'm just taking on, like I said, I started door dashing, grub hubbing, all those good things. So it is what it is, and I'm hoping one day all this stuff will kick in, and sales on the website will be great, and I'll have things that people want and stuff like that. Who knows? Something will turn around. Because of all the trainings and stuff, I don't get to do custom carvings anymore, but I may have to start trying to fit those in, for that extra income and all. Right now it's all my trainings. But, trainings, some people, when they subscribe and stuff, they just can't, they don't use the training, or they can't keep it up, so they have to cancel their subscription, which I understand. I mean, everybody has the same issues I have, right? And you just you deal with it. Vector, VECTOR, Cell, SALE 5, all capital letters. Vector Cell and the number 5. You get vectors off. You get orders off. Now, to show you, while we're waiting for that to calculate, it's at 76%. It's going so well, 76%. To show you what I'm referring to, we have some new vectors, simple V carves, but let's maximize this up. But we got a few little Halloween signs that you might see from the past class, right? We have a few of those vectors and stuff that for our Halloween signs. But we also have some flag designs, vectors, that I've made up as well, that you might be interested in. It's $20 for the flags, $10 for the package of Halloween stuff, and together, if you bought them together and use VectorCell5, you get $5 off, and you get them both for $25. So not a bad price, right? So there's a few designs. I don't know if any of you are bow hunters or deer hunters or anything like that, but so there's a few in there, and they're right at the top of the website. So every little bit helps. All right. We are at 80%. We're almost done, guys. 9:55. I don't know. I don't think we're going to beat the 10 o'clock ranking. But yeah. Yeah, Etsy, some cool coasters. Yeah, I could start putting stuff on Etsy. I try, rather than Etsy for paying a fee, right? My website, the money goes straight to me, right? I don't have to pay any hosting fees or any of that stuff. I mean, I have my website fees every year, but you know, the money goes directly into PayPal or the bank, depending on if somebody uses their PayPal account, it goes to PayPal. If they use their credit card or debit card, it goes into the bank. But yeah. So 84%. It is moving along. Come on. I'm trying to fill the time, but we're going to change the subject now and get off that subject. That's just my life. You know, we'll keep what you see on camera positive and happy. But that's just behind the scenes. You just got a glimpse. $85. We are getting there. 85%. Yeah, if somebody's looking for clocks or frames, I got a bunch of them. Lots of clock files, lots of frames. buildittv.com/shop. There's lots of clocks and frames. By the way, sometimes I gotta reorganize the website. But you know, when you're searching for things on the shop, you know, you're just seeing frames and frames and frames and frames, and then clocks and clocks and clocks before you get to the other stuff, you know, the religious stuff or the patriotic stuff and all. At the very top of the website, there is a menu that you can click on a category to go straight to those, you know, those models instead of having to scroll. I need to redo the layout so that, you know, it always puts the newest stuff I add up front, and when we went in and added in all those clocks and all those frames, I'll put those at the top. And then to get to the other stuff, the Halloween stuff, the Christmas stuff, the patriotic stuff, and all that, you got to scroll, and people get tired and they just leave, you know. But there's categories. You can click on a category and it'll filter out and take you right to that page. 90%. We're 90%. So I just got to rework the website a little bit, get that a little bit more organized to where someone can just click here, and there, and then it'll take them right to where they want to go. Bear with me just a moment. $91%. Come on. We're getting there. I'm in a training class until for the next 15-20 minutes. I will call you as soon as I'm done. So if someone just called me, if you're in the class from Tennessee, I will reach out and call you back as soon as class is over. $94%. We're almost there. The others should be much faster, being smaller and everything. I'm going to try to select the vectors a little bit more precisely. 94, 95. We're getting there, counting down. Yeah, Harvey. Harvey. They're in folders, right? But the way the website, the particular template that I have, is it puts all the, even though they're in folders, and you can sort it out by the folders. On the list, there's a list. You can click patriotic. You can click clocks, frames, CRV files, vector files, you know, that kind of thing. Christmas, you know, you can sort by the holiday right at the top, and it takes you to just that folder of those items. But the default page is, it's all the items, it's all the projects, and it's the latest ones that were added recently that get put at the top. I need to change up the template, really, is what it is. I need to change up the template to where the folders are just front and center, and you can pick the folder you want. Do you want clocks? Do you want frames? Do you want patriotic? That kind of thing, where it's right there where you can see all the folders and you pick what folder you want. I think that would be a much cleaner and easier design. I just haven't gotten to do that yet. All right, so that's done. Thank goodness. Right? Okay, so let's take that border and get rid of it. Okay, we're there. All right, now I'm going to try to be a little bit more selective here. I'm going to try to be a little bit more picky on this, and Let's see here. And anything that's not interfering with the border, not have it selected, right? So that might save me a lot of... Oh. No, I didn't just go in there and delete all that, did I? You goofball. All right, bear with me a second. I hit the... I was thinking that I was deleting things. I'm not deleting nothing. I'm just deselecting, Laney. Don't hit the delete key. Jeez Louise. All right. So... Okay, that's interfering. That's touching. That's inside. These are not. That's not. That's not. That's not. I'm being a little bit more selective because I'd much rather spend the few seconds doing this than the 20 minutes on the other. So I want, if it's touching the border or anything, then I want it selected. Okay, and anything inside. If it's touching the border, okay. I believe I have conquered all of those. I believe we've got everything. There's one more right there. All right, hold down that key there and clear inside. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's moving much faster. You should see that blue line crawl underneath me here, right behind me. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. It's moving much, much faster. We might, it's 10:03. We should only be just a few more minutes, guys. I just got to be a little bit more selective with my vectors and everything. I missed one, but that's okay. I'm just going to hit delete to get rid of it. At this point, it's not going to make or break the design. 70, 75, 80, 90. Moving along. Perfect. All right. Let's get rid of that border. Okay. Let's come down here. And it's the 2012. So let's grab this. I'm going to quickly scan and make sure that there's nothing outside that doesn't need to be in here. And there's nothing inside that, you know. Okay. Let's trim that. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay, let me go through and make sure that anything touching that border is selected. Anything not touching the border is not selected. Anything inside the border is selected. So just going to do this quickly. Okay. All right, so we look good there. So make sure that the vector is selected last, and we're going to trim inside the boundary. That's good. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Racing across. Beautiful. One more set after this, and then we are... So we only ran about 6 minutes over. Okay, that's great. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then street. So, spending a little time selecting what needs to be selected, deselected what doesn't need to be selected, helps save some time, right? So, we have to kind of pick and choose our battles. Making sure that anything that's not needed to be selected is not. And anything that does need to be selected is. Okay. All right, I'm going to be satisfied with that, with those choices for now. Make sure that that border is always selected last. Turn it off, turn it back on, and clear. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Moving along, moving along, moving along. I missed a spot. All right, we'll go back and take a look. Okay, let's go back and right there. So let's take that and that one. Oh, I missed that one too. I missed a couple of those. Okay, now those did not clear, right? So the little ones, I'm not going, those did not clear. It just reset itself. So the little ones, I'm not going to stress over them. I'm just going to delete them. Okay, the little ones. That one worked over here. This one over here, I'm going to try this one more time. That and then that and clear. Okay, it did not clear. So I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to manually trim that. So inside gets trimmed away and then to the left and to the right of it. Okay, and then everything else I will select and just hit delete to get rid of it. All right, so there's my sign. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and let's create the toolpath and let's call it a day. So we're going to take our Smith, Awesome Street, our border, and it's going to be a V Carve toolpath. We're going to start at 0 and have a flat depth for 1/8 of an inch. 60-degree V-bit for me, 1/4 and 1/8 inch end mill, the way to go. And I want to raster cut this. We're going to calculate this toolpath. Hey Lainey, how about hey Lainey, have you thought about adding the thanks, donate, buy me a coffee button to the chat? I don't know how to do that, so I'll have to look that one up, Brooks. And I know how to add a reaction or create a poll, but the other stuff I'm not sure. I do have a donate button, a PayPal donate button, and stuff. I think I could just copy and paste the URL or something, but I will look that up and everything. I'll look that up. All right, so here's our sign that we've been waiting so long for tonight. It's been, you know, the main body of it. And so we're going to go ahead and turn off our text, make sure just our texture is selected. And we're going to V Carve this. We're going to start at 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to, most of these cuts are not that big. So I'm going to do it first with no limit and everything, because I want some of the really big grungy areas to kind of be dug in a little bit and all. I'm not going to use any flat depth. I'm going to let the V-bit do it. I'm going to calculate it with no flat depth, no limit to begin with, and then I'll look and see if I get any kind of warning. And if I get any kind of warning or something, then I will go in and set a flat depth. But so spending the time to select the proper vectors and deselect the vectors, you know, the vectors that don't need to be selected and everything, definitely proved to be the quickest method and everything to calculate. Of course, it's going to be because it was a smaller area, but if it's not having to think about all these vectors that aren't even in the game, you know, they're not even near the border or inside the border or anything, if it doesn't have to think about all them, it can focus on the stuff that it needs to focus on. So it would probably be quicker for us to go in and select and deselect those areas myself and stuff. So depending on what you know, what your areas may be. Let me see if I can actually create a let me see if I can actually create a texture in Vectric, or not a texture, but a color pattern. I'm going to do one more time. I'm going to take Smith, this, and this, and I'm going to go back into that toolpath, and I'm going to go 0.13. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. 0.12. I'm sorry, 1, 2, not 3, 1, 2, 7. I'm going to go a little bit deeper than 1/8 of an inch, right? I'm going to calculate that toolpath a little bit deeper. Now, my texture, let's reset that and preview that toolpath. I want to be able to add colors to each of these to color them differently. My texture, the texture, I want to start at 0.127 and cut it come on. Actually, I wanted to go 0.12. Yeah. I actually, hold on, I did that wrong. The texture I did wrong. I'm going to go back in there. I want, the texture yeah, no, did I do that wrong? Bear with me a second here. Preview the visible toolpath. Okay, that's that. Now, I want to be able to add color to this back area here. And if I just do a simple color there, if I go in here and add black, black, black to that. And this, I'm going to add, I'm going to go kind of a white. I don't know. We're going to find out here. Okay. My awesome got cut into right there. Let me look in here and see here. Yep, there's a letter right there. So I would, of course, delete that out, right? You know, and I would recalculate that toolpath. But let me see if I can lighten this up a little bit. Let's go, instead of black, let's go brown. 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 And let me see if I change this to black, like it's a darker, deeper area. You know, like the paint is kind of chipping away. You know what I mean? But anyway, so let me get this here. All right, so long story short, it's 10:17. We're going to wrap up, but distressed, distorted, grunge textures, you know, they're not our normal texturing toolpath that has patterns and randomness and stuff. This is just we're selectively grunge and distorting and beating this up, you know, with a chain and nuts and bolts and whatever, you know, like when we're distressing furniture. But we're kind of doing it with our CNC, if you will, right? In the case of this, you know, we would I would, let me see, I'm trying to think about how I would paint this. Very carefully. Let's see here. I don't know how I would paint that. But the whole thing would get painted black. The orange would be a foam roller to go over the orange area. And then I would paint the top of the letters, you know, white or whatever. But you could have that look. All right. We will hit save on this, and hopefully you get something out of it. Hopefully you give it a try sometime. It's a long process, but hey, we made it through. Troy says, ask Dave Gatton about the super chat. I'll have to ask Dave. I need to talk to Dave and see how he's doing anyway. I know he wasn't doing too well not too long back. I need to check in on him. You need to do a chat for sure. I appreciate that. Thanks, Camaro. Okay, when you're deleting everything, you missed the spot under the left foot of the A. We caught that after the carve. So in awesome. So thanks, Blue Knight. You saw that before I did. You know, of course, we would recalculate that toolpath so it did not look like that. That's the vector we missed, and the vector on the 2 on 2012. If we look. Well, that was not there, but I'd recalculate that toolpath so that wasn't there. But Blue Knight, you saw that before me, and Brooke Martin, we don't see that. We don't see that. We don't see that. Talk with Mark Lindsay or Michael Meslick. Okay, to configure your chat button options. Great lesson tonight. Thank you. I appreciate that. Glad you got that, Blue Knight. What font are you using for the address? LLL, farm it out. Farm it out. There you go. Dave Gatton coffee session 9 o'clock Eastern on YouTube. I will have to get with Dave and check that out. Okay, the font. What font am I using? This particular font is part of a heritage set. It is called the Barris Cerin, Cerin regular. and the Barris Saren regular. And it is part of the Heritage font collection. Bear with me and I'll show that to you. Here, heritagetype.com, and it is part of the Vintage brand. The Vintage brand, I think it's part of the Vintage brand. Hold on a second. Either that or I got it on defont.com. It's one of those two places. I either paid for it here. Let me see what fonts are in this list. There is the... Where's my little list of fonts there, buddy boys? Give me a second. Black River, Old Faulty, Royal Signage, and Brilliant. Brilliant. Is that what I said? Brilliant? No, Barris. So Barris is off of defont.com. Barris Cerin, C-E-R-I-N, regular. B-A-R-I-S. It would be on Defont, D-A-F-O-N-T.com. That would be the only place I would get it from if it wasn't part of the Heritage collection that I have, which is this collection bundle right here. So, and it's on sale still. So, but that is the font, Barris. Okay. Now it's an all caps font. Even if you try to type in lowercase, it still comes up in all caps. All right. Yeah. I appreciate that, Troy. Blue Knight, I appreciate that very much. That offer and all. And Bruce. Yeah. So you guys have a great night. And we will say goodnight here, say goodbye. And hopefully, I don't know, hopefully you got something out of this class that you can pull from. Okay? All right. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you soon.